Richard Harris joining us this morning, Chief Executive at Port Shelter. Dr. Harris, thanks so much for joining us this morning. We were discussing the various updates overnight and the fact that once again Donald Trump has made headlines. There's uncertainty about the whole tariff conversation, but in the last week you've seen the 10-year bond yield move from over 4.5% to below 4.3%. What are the implications? Why is that happening? And how do you look at emerging markets in that context?
Well, I think the markets are moving all over the place because everything's uncertain. You know, most of Trump's policies now are being made on the steps of Air Force One. He seems to be speaking on the hoof. It seems ironic that he would try and encourage people to come to the States for a relatively small sum of $5 million US when he's trying to close the border.
Good evening to you. Let's piece this. There is, after a really long time of US exceptionalism, we are starting to see the first signs of maybe, just maybe, some bit of slowdown. Parallelly, at the same time, China is doing multiple moves to up its economic growth, give comfort, what have you. Is this the first sign of the dollar at the margin thinking of moving to the EMs after moving back to the US for the last 3-4 months at the very least?
Well, I've been calling this the great pivot. You know, we are in a situation where China is starting to recover. There's been an enormous amount of reflation going on. The government clearly has a real desire to get the economy moving. And I think eventually all of that stimulus is going to end up in the stock market. Whereas you've got the US where things are very uncertain, where the consumer's now not so sure what's happening, where you've got threats of higher inflation, threats of tariffs, threats of immigration controls. All of these things, I think, are quite bad for the US. And as a result, we've a situation where very expensive US is likely to yield to much cheaper parts of the world as international investors start to look in that direction. I think China will be the main beneficiary. But at the moment, I think as long as markets don't collapse overall, I think EMs will do quite well. And that should be positive for the Indian market too.
Dr. Harris, hi, Tamanna here as well, and great to have you on the show as always. Just trying to get your sense of the impact we could see of tariffs playing out, and what now President Trump is saying on tariffs on European Union. How do you see that playing out, even as he's pretty clear that he is going ahead with tariffs on Mexico and Canada?
Well, I think the whole thing with tariffs, I think the biggest issue that's coming out now is not whether you put 10% or 30% or something on certain goods. The big thing is that it's really damaging the respect that America has had in the rest of the world. You know, America is now not trustworthy. There's a lack of credibility. Where are they going to go next? And yes, you can say that perhaps Europe took America for granted, certainly in terms of the nuclear umbrella. It's gone on for 70, 80 years now, and it probably had gone on too long, and the Europeans have managed to reduce their defense spending to extremely low levels at the expense of the American nuclear umbrella. You can argue that, and that's certainly true. But you can't destroy the trust and credibility that's built up over the last 80 years. And expect to have a positive outcome out of that. So I think the tariffs, while they are important, the key thing is that America's credibility has now been damaged. Nobody knows now what's coming down the pipeline.
Dr. Harris, thanks so much for joining us this morning. A very interesting perspective for us ahead of the start of trade today.